Morning guys, and welcome back to Life as a Chem. Now for those who don't know me, my name is Olympia. I also refer to myself as a Chem. In my previous video I talked about what the C in my name stands for, and today I will be talking about what the E or I can't remember what side, stands for. And E stands for epilepsy. And here's a leaf. And today I'm going to be using this video to discuss things that I've learned through my epilepsy journey, but most importantly, when do you tell a person you have epilepsy? But before I start, help a girl out, subscribe to that channel, somewhere here, give me a thumbs up, shake that bell to see every time I make a new video, which hopefully will be every Thursday, and let's start. I usually think of three things when I'm about to decide if I should tell a person or when I should tell a person I have epilepsy. Obviously, I can't give you a specific time frame because everyone is ready at a different time point in their life, but these are the three things I think of. First, how open-minded are these people? Second, how much time am I spending with them? And third, how it will affect a relationship. At the end of this video, I will reveal some funny stories I've had after seizures, which obviously at the moment they weren't funny, but now I personally find them hilarious because dark humor is how I deal with it. First of all, what is epilepsy? Quick overview, epilepsy is abnormal electrical activity in the brain. It basically means our brain goes haywire, blows the fuse. I personally have grand mal seizures, which are the seizures that are mostly thought associated with epilepsy. When you tell someone you have epilepsy, let's say, I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 19. I had just returned for winter break from Georgetown, where I have a dual degree in cognitive neuroscience and art history. Thank you very much. I feel like I need to say that because I worked my ass off to get them. Anyways, and I had my seizure in the car while my mom was driving, freaked out. I'm very thankful to live in the year 2020. Obviously not now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but in terms that epilepsy is much more accepted. It's no longer such a taboo. It's not associated with possession. But there are places on Earth, unfortunately, that epilepsy still has a negative connotation. And why that is? I think epilepsy is the icky disease. And when I say icky, I do not mean disgusting, I mean unsettling. Why? Because in most diseases, in most chronic illnesses, you can point to it, or the person can communicate with you and say, this is what's wrong. However, we will go from fully functioning, or at least I will go from fully functioning to falling on the floor and convulsing. So not a lot of people like this unknown. It terrifies them, and it makes sense. Which was one of the reasons why when I lived in a very small community, I was very selective of who I would tell my diagnosis with. So out of the entire community, let's say only 7 people knew, including my pharmacist. So this taboo does exist, and people will respond negatively, but c'est la vie. The second thing I like to think of is how much time am I spending with this person. Now, I learned my lesson, I would say the hard way. One of my seizures was at Georgetown, and it was during one of my midterms. I had pulled an all-nighter, which for those who do have epilepsy know that not a good idea. And I had a seizure in the middle of the class. My professor didn't know, the students didn't know, and obviously they freaked out because they didn't know what they were viewing. And when I started coming out of the seizure and waking up, I saw this terror on these people's faces. Now, I have a weird reaction when I get out of a seizure. Aside from the fact the person telling me that I had a seizure and me freaking out and crying, the first thing I ask people is, I'm sorry, are you guys okay? Even though I was the one that just had the seizure. Because I feel so bad, which I know I shouldn't, but I still do. I feel so bad that these people had to witness this, that these people had to be terrified by this. So when I saw the terror on these people's faces, I thought, especially my professor, who I had like 3 classes with, he deserved to know. So when I'm in the process of deciding when to tell that person, I also think of how much do they deserve to know if I do have a seizure. Don't they deserve to know what they're viewing? Now this is a completely subjective point, I usually tell my friends, my very close friends that I spent, let's say, an extensive amount of time with, because if they do see it, I do not want to see that terror that I saw on my professor's face. The other thing I think of is how it will affect the relationship. And this pertains mostly, I guess, to friendships, but also romantic relationships. Epilepsy is a very difficult disease to live with. It is terrifying. I can't lose control. I can't go out, get drunk, pull an all-nighter. The consequences are severe and sometimes life-threatening. However, we sometimes forget that we're not the only ones that have to deal with the diagnosis. The people around us, the people that love us for who we are, also have to deal with this diagnosis. But one of my biggest fears is that once the person knows my diagnosis, I will become epilepsy. So, even though I have epilepsy, epilepsy doesn't have me. And when I tell someone, I become terrified that from then on, I'm not Olympia. I am the girl with epilepsy, which is one of the reasons why I refrained telling people when I lived in that very small community, because I did not want to be defined by that. And most of all, especially for the people that are really close to you, you don't want them to pity you. You don't want them to think less of you. Because then you feel like you've lost what you've put an extensive amount of time, what you've built throughout months, years, or whatever. I have been emotionally bullied in the sense that when I've been overexcited or when I've been really angry, I've had a person turn around and say, "Why don't you pop one of those sedatives?" And obviously that hurts. But if there's anything I can tell you guys is that although you can control who you say, although you can control, let's say, the reaction you will have to your diagnosis to an extent, you can't control how other people will react. And I feel like that is kind of a crash test for any relationship, and actually any chronic illness, let's say. Because if the person truly loves you and truly wants to be with you, they don't care. Yeah, it may come as a shock in the beginning, but they'll accept you for who you are, and if they do define you by your illness, then they're not worth it. Simple as that. If they can't deal with it, that's not on you. And you should be with people that see your illness as a strength, your battle as a strength, and not as a weakness. Now, I told you guys that I'll reveal a funny story about one of my seizures. I personally find this one hilarious. Feel free to comment below if you have any stories yourself, or if you've also witnessed people having seizures and have a story to share. So I did a year abroad in St. Andrews, and I had a seizure again during one of my midterms because, again, I pulled an all-nighter. Apparently I was really stupid when I was in my early 20s. And after I recovered from the seizure, I could not speak English. What do I mean? I'm bilingual, so I speak Greek and English. And apparently, there are studies out there that say that you can understand the true language of a bilingual person if they have a seizure and it affects that area, what language they will respond in. So apparently Greek is my true language, even though I'm bilingual, because after I came out of the seizure, my professor was looking at me and the students were asking me if I'm okay, and I was answering, and they all seemed very confused, and I thought they were complete idiots. And this guy comes up and he's like, "You have to try and speak English." Now, for my fellow Greeks out there, I turned around and said, "Ρε μαλάκα τι λες," which basically means, "Yo, dumb, what are you saying?" And they had to actually bring a Greek professor in, and he was the one that explained to me, "You're speaking Greek, try and focus." So that's my funny story. Obviously at the moment I was terrifying because I didn't understand why people couldn't understand me. Feel free to comment below if you have anything that you would like to share from your epilepsy journeys, or people that you know have epilepsy. Also, if you guys have any ideas or any requests for future videos about this, don't forget to push that subscribe button. I really have to know which side it is. give me a thumbs up, ring that bell so you guys know when I'm making new videos, hopefully every Thursday, and that's it, folks.